Okay, critical factors to avoid a 98-pound structural weakling. That's what the game plan is. And before I start, I would like to say that, I understand, or the heart and soul, the way that I've put this information together for you is structured to kind of help you make better judgment calls and, faster and with more confidence, because I understand that in the system you're working in, there's some rigid rules that you have to try to work, constraints you have to work within, but yet the people you are serving want you to be Superman, to make it work, make the problems go away. And so I feel like giving you good information will maximize your possibilities to make good, fast judgment calls and be able to kind of say, this one's a hot potato, it's got to go back to the engineer, or say, no, I can see how come you made that change and it's actually stronger. And I'm not saying that to break rules or anything like that. I'm saying just to follow the spirit of the law, or spirit of what's intended. Yeah, exactly. Okay, here's the laser. So there's 3 topics that we're going to cover: tension loads, lateral bracing, and beam span. And tension loads, I kind of feel like they're the Achilles heel of most structures. That's kind of where it, will fail a lot of times. And lateral bracing is where you'll be able to, well, there's 5 or 6 different lateral systems that hold the structure up. And with this information, you kind of, even before you get out of your truck, you can kind of look at it and kind of have a sense of what might be the weak point before you even walk through the structure. And then beam span and wood quality is last, in part because it's the most forgiving. If there is a problem with a beam span, an overspan beam, or wood quality that isn't quite up to snuff, you've got a pretty forgiving situation. Beams, when they fail, they usually do it slowly over time. It reminds me of my father-in-law. He was an old Swede, and there's a story about him building their own house. He was from Alaska. This is what my brother-in-law has told me. They were building their house, and was it a main floor beam or a beam over a garage? And he was like a 12-year-old boy, and he's like, Dad, that'd be there for 100 years. And then in time, they ended up putting a post under it. Yeah, but that's the nature of a beam. I mean, it takes a lot to actually make it collapse, with wood failure. Now, on the flip side, you guys probably remember this situation there with that horse arena off of 503, how that roof just suddenly collapsed.
Tension.
Oh, that was
tension,
it.
yeah. And I don't know if you guys read the reports or not.
I did.
Yeah, and my uncle was involved in that, Doug Sarkkinen.
Right.
And
He was the engineer.
yeah, so he
He
investigated.
engineered that and did the investigation.
Yeah, he
Remember
investigated it, and he said there was the reason for that failure was right at the bottom of the scissor truss. You got your kind of like so. There's a lot of tension, right?
Yep.
That scissor right there, and the gang nail was installed 90 degrees where it shouldn't have been, so that probably didn't get all the teeth in there that it should have. And the gang nail is designed for tension load in a certain direction, not 90 degrees different. So all of a sudden, that baby just crashed down.
And when one went, they all went.
Yeah. And after we get through the last part of tension loads, I've got a little embarrassing story to tell you guys too about tension loads. Okay, so tension loads, and a lot of this, before we get too deep into it, I'm talking about this information as if you send a new guy or a newbie to the special page to learn So a lot of this is review for you guys, so just kind of hang with it. So truss applications, knee brace triangles, and perpendicular to grain. And the perpendicular to grain, I'll jump ahead a little bit here. Perpendicular to grain is, for timber framing, that is the most critical point. And it's the same in a truss. The bolt, they want to get to the center of the beam. But it's that splitting action, that where that tenon or where the bolt is, how much meat is left to resist splitting action. That's kind of the crux of timber framing. Now oak, compared to fir, has a real high value perpendicular to grain. Fir is parallel to grain. Fir is the same as oak, like 500 pounds or somewhere in there. But perpendicular to grain, fir is half. It comes out at 250. So that's, you know, if I have a situation where I need a lot of shear, I really go for the peg right in the middle of the post or the beam where it's connecting. And sometimes you'll see a situation, you'll see a picture further on where the tenon actually goes through the post, and you can even stagger your pegs, or you could even put a keyway in the backside. So here's a simple truss with a tension load at the bottom. You see the compression on the top cords, tension on the bottom cord. This force is going down. If my elbows were the points where they connect, as long as the points cannot spraddle out, the truss is strong. Here's an example of a simple truss. Right here you've got a tongue and fork connected with the pegs. Then you've got your 3 pegs, and the tenon does go through. And in this particular picture, the real steep pitch really negates the need for all them pegs, and I mean, it's just way overbuilt. I mean, when you get something like that, the force down at the bottom is pretty negligible. Yes?
And the tenon doesn't go back like this. It actually, you can't see it, but when it connects, the tenon goes up like that, right?
Well, at one point,
so you get some extra shear working for you.
Exactly. And if there's any other points, just interrupt as we're going along.
Well, yeah, another question though. So what you're saying is the steeper the pitch, the less the horizontal component, right?
Yeah, less tension down at the
So
bottom.
now tension,
Yeah.
horizontal component, then you pull it out. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And the tenon actually goes perpendicular right here, perpendicular, and then from here it goes straight across level.
Do those actually have some bearing on that situation, or is that more for decoration?
No.
These right
When
here.
you look at, I'm looking at the bottom there, and I'm assuming it's
Yeah.
all the way across.
Now these here are pocketed in,
So
and they've got a
instead of just
timber screw behind this peg. They're pocketed in and sit by 3/4, and so there's actually a wood hanger. I mean, it's housed in there.
So the whole plumb cut on the bottom there is recessed into that beam.
Yeah, it's recessed in, and sometimes what I'll do too is actually recess it to where it angles out, and then where it's taking more meat, it's more in the neutral axis of the beam.
So it's a little deeper at the bottom than it is at the top.
Yeah, and then I'm not weakening the beam if I feel like there's a conflict there.
Gotcha.
You could put